Good afternoon and welcome to yet another installment of Government in Transition, a special program brought to you by the People's Progressive Party Civic. I am Michael Gordon. I have joining me today two very established gentlemen. First, Bishop Juan Edghill. I'd like to thank you for being a part of this program, as well as
thank you, Michael.
Prolific writer and commentator, Mr. Sasenarine Singh. It's an honor to have you as well, Sis. Sis, I beg you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to first begin with the posturing, and I would want to describe it as political posturing of the Chief Elections Officer, Mr. Keith Lowenfield. I heard a very interesting point earlier by a very learned gentleman who essentially explained that Keith Lowenfield, notwithstanding his transgression, notwithstanding his recent posture, notwithstanding his misrepresentation of who he really is or who the position or what is the constitutionality or the legality of the position of Chief Elections Officer. I am informed and told that Mr. Lowenfield is in essence knowledgeable, more than knowledgeable about what really is. He is more than knowledgeable about right and wrong. However, my learned friend is of the view that Mr. Lowenfield has been significantly compromised and has been pandering to the whims and fancies of those who compromise him. And his position is against the backdrop, Bishop Edghill, that even in recently released videos with Keith Lowenfield, you see him actually saying what is the position, how impossible it is for someone to vote more than once. And then there's another video with him stating the construct of the Guyana Elections Commission, the constitutionality of the commission, and the subservience of the CEO to the commission. Bishop Edghill?
Well, Michael, firstly, Keith Lowenfield is a statutory officer. He has participated in many elections 2020. Lowenfield successfully ran the 2016 local government elections. He successfully ran the 2018 local government elections. He's well learned and well schooled in the representation of the People's Act. He understands clearly his role as Chief Elections Officer and Commissioner of National Registration. He understands his role in terms of his answering responsibilities to the Commission. And that is why I believe the charges, the criminal charges that has been filed against him are correct, because he's willfully doing something. Now, if he's willfully behaving in such a corrupt, I would say fraudulent, senseless manner to put to the commission a report of fraudulent and fictitious numbers, something is weighing heavily on him. Mr. Lowenfield has experience in management. Is it the land that he has been gifted, which I've spoken about before, from the government since they have fallen? Or is it the security that we see around Mr. Lowenfield these days? Is the security not only to protect him, but as a security that is pressuring him? There are a lot of questions, but the point of the matter is he has to stand up to the microphone and speak the truth and do the truth. Guyana is depending on all its statutory officers as well as its constitutional office holders to act properly, to obey the Constitution where that is relevant, and to follow the rule of law where that matters. So whether it's the president, whether it's GCOM, whether it's the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, or statutory officers, the Commissioner of Police, the Chief Elections Officer, the Chief of Staff of the Army, the Chancellor of the Judiciary, which is also a constitutional office holder. All of these persons must act properly and in keeping with the Constitution and the rule of law. And Mr. Lowenfield has been compromised for some reason or another. But the good thing about it, the court case that we have had now before the CCJ has given this country an opportunity to pause, to breathe, to reflect, to think, and bring everybody back to the middle of the road to do what is right. So personally, I'm expecting a Keith Lowenfield of the 2015 character, a Keith Lowenfield who's in his right mind, sensible, following the law, understands his reporting responsibility to produce a report to GCOM in keeping with the instructions that have been given to him by the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission to use the 10 certificates. So the pressure around him, whether it's the land deal, whether it's the police that is around him, or the political pressure that he's getting from those that he have aligned himself with throughout this period, I'm expecting the 2015 character, Lowenfield, to be behaving in the next couple of days.
Says much of what Bishop Edghill just spoke to. We've been having extensive discussions on these, you and I. Even early in the day, we've had some discussions on some of these very things. And you've had some interesting points.
Yeah, but before I go into my presentation, I want to thank you for inviting me, and thanks to the People's Progressive Party Civic for giving me this opportunity to share my opinion. And I also want to acknowledge and pray for the grade 6 students who've written their exam, and I wish all of them across this country, very tough conditions they had to write their exams, but they did it. So I pray for them to all pass their exams so they can graduate to a secondary school. But to the crux of the matter, on June 13th, the Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, told this, well, GCOM and this nation, that he found instances of voters impersonation that affected what he presented to GCOM. And he went ahead unilaterally, and invalidated approximately 115,000 valid votes. But we have to acknowledge that this allegation of voter impersonation is nothing else but an allegation. And in the Oxford Dictionary clearly defined an allegation as an accusation without verifiable proof.
Says I'm going to be undiplomatic. It's a lie. Let's just call it what it is. It's a lie.
So he took the law into his hands, and he did things that he's not authorized to do in law, and thus, in undiplomatic terms, he broke the law. So, in all fairness, if you break the law and you do not follow the rule of law, you have one place: to be tried in front of the court, and if found guilty, you should be put in jail. And in my books, based on the evidence that I have in front of me, Mr. Keith Lowenfield has broken the law, because the law clearly empowers one institution with the power to declare results, and that's the GCOM Commission, 7-member commission, not Keith Lowenfield. He is a utensil. And in the law, using his utensilship, he has to do simple mathematics, arithmetic. When we did the recount process, we came up with 10 tabulation certificates that were prepared, authenticated, and verified, and prepared and signed by GCOM staff, not political parties, GCOM staff. That came out of a process where there were about 14 people from different stakeholders who witnessed every single valid and invalid vote brought out. We looked at it. We certified what was valid and what was not valid, and what belonged to which list of parties. So there was a process that was done under the law. Mr. Lowenfield, with one stroke of his pen, decided that that entire process and all the laws of our country should be thrown into the Demerara River, because he is King Lowenfield and he can do what he wants. Well, no, not in a democracy that follows the rule of law. So there is a great amount of inconsistency in what Mr. Lowenfield is doing today versus what he did in 2015, because that video, as we saw, he clearly established the process which this nation has followed in the recount process and on elections night when the 2,339 polling officers counted those ballots. And we've done everything right, save and except for one thing that was done wrong. One man again, Claremont Mingo, decided that he will alter information that he has no power again under the law to alter. And this is why we're here. And we're here today because Mr. Mingo initially broke the law. And now again, we're seeing Mr. Lowenfield breaking the law. And we have to fix this. And we have to take the law. And I'm humbled by what I'm hearing from the chairman of GCOM, because she did a written submission. And that is a very, very important document because she outlined the process under the law. And that is all we're asking. As Bishop was saying, let's get back to the middle of the road and do what is expected of all of us under the law.
Okay. I get what you're saying, what you're saying says. And we spoke, you spoke extensively about the Mingo scenario, the Lowenfield scenario. And of course, you referenced that video where he explained that how it's impossible for one person to vote at multiple locations. Mr. Lowenfield also explained at great length his relationship, the relationship between the chief elections officer of the Secretariat and the commission itself. Recently, you saw a diametrically opposed view by one Pete Lowenfield. And thus, Bishop Edghill's point about compromise, possibly pressure, notwithstanding all of that, there is still some optimism that the right thing will eventually be done and the truth will prevail. But looking ahead, Bishop, Guyana is at it's at a critical crossroad. And at the end of it all, of course, at the end of it all, we will see Dr. Mohamed Erfanali being sworn in as Guyana's president. But Guyana has to move forward. And there are a number of things, a number of hurdles to be crossed for that to be done outside of the electoral process, one of which is nation building, social cohesion, reconciliation, economic rebuilding. We've seen the state of our economy, and I'm going to ask you to speak a bit about the economy. But Bishop Edghill, where do we go from here once the electoral hurdle vote has been crossed?
Well, Michael, I'm looking forward that after Wednesday, the Guyana Elections Commission will meet, a declaration will be made, the president will be sworn in, and based upon our manifesto promises, Guyanese could look forward to social inclusion and social cohesion. A government that provides equal opportunities and equal access. Michael, Guyana is badly in need of national reconciliation and national reconstruction. On the point of national reconciliation, we need to get the elections behind us. It is disgusting, frustrating, tormenting that 120 plus days after the election, we're still talking about an election. You know what we should be talking about right now? We should be talking about budget measures to alleviate the suffering of the ordinary man, measures to stimulate the economy, measures to provide support to small businesses that they could survive in this COVID-19 environment, measures to ensure that our economy is resuscitated and it's not just merely oil dependent. We should be talking about improvement of our infrastructure, At this time, we should be talking about wooing the investor to come back or to get new investors to build a Milo hydroelectricity project to ensure we have cheap, reliable, and renewable electricity. We should be talking about bringing in the gas pipeline from ExxonMobil's operation offshore Guyana. We should be talking about a new Demerara Harbor Bridge to ensure the suffering of our people as they commute is alleviated. We should be talking about the Quarantine Bridge, the Linden to Lethem Road. We should be talking about opening up the road from Ogle, bypassing the East Bank all the way coming out of Diamond. We should be talking about modernization of our airports and making Lethem into a regional hub. We should be talking here about the Deepwater Harbor. We should be talking here about modernizing the sugar industry, putting people back to work, giving people what they long for. That's their house lot, where they could be able to go to the bank, get their loan, build their modern home. We should be talking about getting Guyanese to get scholarships, to get themselves equipped for this new oil and gas economy that is emerging. We should be talking about dealing with depressed communities and ensuring those depressed communities that are crime prone are adequately accessed and serviced to ensure that our youths are given second chances and opportunities to development. We should be talking about bringing our people together, modernizing this country, putting in an architecture for stability, both political stability and economic stability. So the longer we take with these little sideshows of the Lowenfields and the Mingos and this report and that report, we're holding a nation back. That is why the pressure is on David Granger to concede. He knows he has lost the election. He needs to call a meeting of his high command of the APNU-AFC and says, boys, we've tried our best. It's time to give up. Let Guyana breathe again. Let this country go forward. It's time that they take their place in the National Assembly as a responsible opposition, hold the government's feet to the fire, bring forward policies and programs that will develop all the people of Guyana. And more than anything else, there must be political dialogue that ensures political stability, enhancing the welfare, putting back confidence in our people, removing the fear factor of one group being eliminated and another group benefiting. And we need to be working assiduously to create that future for Guyana, for our children and our children's children. We cannot continue every day, keep talking about an election. So we've got another 7 days to talk about elections. And I'm saying after that 7 days, we must be talking about Guyana's future. Something has got to give. Somebody's got to man up. You know, the Guyanese language. Somebody's got to man up to their responsibility and says, why? We can't bring this thing down. Guyana can't burn. Guyana must develop. We must be calling upon all of our strengths. People from academia, our Guyanese in the diaspora who are talented and skilled, to lend their contribution to make Guyana a home, a paradise. We now have the possibilities that we've been dreaming about. And all of us should become magnanimous, lift ourselves up above the petty political fray, look at what is truth, what is right, and let us behave as Democrats. And what Democrats do, when you lose, you give way, and you play your role as a responsible opposition. And that's what the APNU-AFC needs to do. We need to get Air Finale sworn in. The cabinet needs to be named. Parliament needs to be reconvened. A budget needs to be read. People need to be breathing again. We need to get this country working again, putting people back to work and putting that hope and inspiring hope in people once again. And that's what I'm looking forward for, Michael. Not every day for us to have Lampi and Pampi and Mutt and Jeff, or whatever names you want to call, some lunatic French element continuing to sell narratives that are based upon misinformation and lies. But we should be behaving in a responsible way. So now is the time to call upon all the goodness that is located in our inner being and located in our collective Guyanese soul to act responsibly. So I want to make that call today. All the goodness that reside in us individually and reside in our collective Guyanese soul, must be called upon to pull ourselves out of this dark hole of 120 plus counting days of this electoral morass. And we need to get back to the middle of the road and move Guyana forward. So I thought I would say that today, Mike.
Since this is an issue I know you've been very passionate about, especially from the economic perspective, and I know you pay a lot of attention to the numbers. You must be optimistic. I know you have religiously and slavishly paid attention to the numbers and all the economic indicators of the day, but you must be optimistic, like perhaps the Apostle Paul, an incurable optimist about Guyana's economic future.
A couple of things before I get there. One, I want to agree with Bishop when he said we all have to come together and pull ourselves out of the dark hole. You know, Abraham Lincoln once said, character is like a tree and reputation is like a shadow. The shadow is what we think of it. The tree is the real thing. So I'm calling on all Guyanese, and I know our Guyanese people are fantastic. Don't worry with the narrative from the fringe elements associated with the PNC. Our Guyanese people have it within them to show this nation and the entire world that we're the real deal. And we've done it before. I don't know if you know this, but when we had the Great Flood in 2005, 60% of our economy disappeared within months. 60%. And by the next year, we had economic growth. And that was under His Excellency, at that time, President Barry Jagdeo. This country has the power, and it's proven itself already, that it can come together and fix whatever the fringe elements throw at us, whether it's by nature or by mankind in the form of the irresponsible and reckless PNC. So I believe that we can fix this. And this reconciles with the theme that His Excellency, the President-elect, Dr. Irfan Ali, keeps talking about. Let's fix this. From my conversations with the senior people in the PEPP, they have a three-stroke engine they're coming with: support, stabilization, and expansion. Of course, because of COVID, and of course, because of the economic destruction that was caused because of this political issue, we had an economic implosion. It's as much as 12% right now, since Christmas to now. The economy has disappeared. So we have to get some of these people back on the ladder. Some 30,000 Guyanese workers have lost their job, whether temporary or permanent, but they're not working right now. So there's no income. And unfortunately, most of these people are what you call the paycheck to paycheck group. So they are in real poverty. So we have to do the support mechanism of trying to get these people back on the ladder, back to work, as Dr. Irfan Ali said, back into productive, becoming assets, and back into productivity. Now, that is easily done, but you require political will and economic strategy. Now, that, you know, is a missing link in the APNU-AFC because, you know, they got a great economy from the PPP. When you saw what they got in 2015, they got $15 billion in gold. How much are they leaving now? Less than 700 million, which is less than $0.7 billion in gold they're leaving. They've depleted about 140 million US dollars over the last 5 years, despite Guyana being an oil economy. I mean, a lot of people don't know this. Guyana has earned about 500 million US dollars in oil sales this year. Of course, all of it does not belong to Guyana, but the bottom line is there's economic activities around that, but it's not filtering through because it's being siphoned off, it's being blocked, it's being mismanaged, it's being misallocated. So 30,000 families continue to suffer even though Guyana has benefited from this bounty. So the big reality, one has to reflect on, so as I said, to use a three-stroke engine: support, stabilization, and expansion. On the stabilization side, the PPP Civic has already developed a plan via their manifesto to rapidly turn around the deterioration that we saw in the productive sector. Sugar, for one, Dr. Irfan Ali is committed to surgically looking at the sugar sector with a view of opening estates. He made that publicly clear on the trail, on the political trail. That is our commitment, and we will deliver to it. He talked about stimulating the state of aggregate demand, getting our people back into working, earning, and spending so that there's more for all. Arresting this runaway public expenditure. You know, there's billions of dollars being spent by the Granger cabal on dietary need, executive travel. Thank the Lord. You know, everybody said, oh, COVID is a bad thing. COVID was a savior to stop Team Granger from traveling executive class and renting planes to go all over the place. We saved this country a lot of money. So thank the Lord for that.
As I said, I know you're passionate about these economic issues, but I want us to focus on the political issues at hand. However, in my own opinion, whilst the COVID stopped the travels and so on, we've seen massive amounts, Bishop Edghill, of contracts awarded without due process. We've seen significant of state lands being transferred to individuals close to and or related to the APNU-AFC. This also is, to my mind, as we prepare to close this program, just in about 2 minutes for each of you gentlemen, this, to my mind, is representative of the legacy, perhaps hallmark, of the Granger administration since 2015.
Well, Michael, someone told me years ago, their definition of greed is the fear of shortage. The fear of shortage is their definition of greed. And that is what we've seen manifested in this APNU-AFC cabal. They came into government. They knew that there would be a one-term government. They don't know how long it would have taken them before they were toppled. So they went ahead with greed to enrich themselves because of the fear that when they're not in office, they're going to suffer shortage. Once the no confidence motion was passed, that greed kicked into high gear. And what we have seen since March 2nd, when they realized they have lost the election, that greed went into overdrive. And what they are doing is not merely just disposing of assets of the state, but doing it in a manner where they can benefit in the present and in the long term, and putting the citizens at an advantage. This greed, this squandermania, this theft of public resources, this blatant corruption must come to an end and must be put in check. And the longer this electoral process of not having a declaration takes, the more they are able to do. It's only a matter of time for Guyana to see what they would have done with the 7 days that the CCJ would have given between the hearing and the day of judgment, because they went straight into strategy. If we get adverse hearing, we're out. So we got to be able to do A, B, C, D, E, F. So the flurry continues. But the good news is it will soon come to an end. Those who have gone out of line will have to face the law. Our presidential candidate and now president-elect, as well as our general secretary of the PPP, have basically said, we're not going to witch hunting, but if you break the law, witch hunting is not, if you break the financial laws, you spend money that you weren't authorized to spend. You entered into contracts where there was no appropriation act that facilitates expenditure in that direction because there is no budget, there is no capital budget that has been approved by the National Assembly. If you have gone in to contracts that you know you ought not to have gone into, well, then these things will have to be re-examined and we will have to deal with them in keeping with the law. But like I'm saying, Guyanese, we don't want to just be talking about what we're going to do to them, because it's not about what we're going to do to them. It's what we're going to do for Guyana. And in order for us to be able to do for Guyana What Guyana needs, some wrongs must be made right. So we're not going in there with an agenda that says, this is what we can do to them. We want to assure you, this is what we will do for Guyana. And while we are doing for Guyana what Guyanese deserve, wrongs will have to be put right. So Michael, thank you for having me on your program today. And Sace, it's always a pleasure to share time with you.
We're not done quite yet. Say some parting words.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me also. And in my parting words, I want to be short and sweet. Basically, the sale of these lands raises serious questions about the arm's length relationship between the de facto state or the de facto government and their cronies. I see it the way I see it, and I'm going to crown it off as this. It's a vulgar abuse of power, and I don't want to use that phrase as mine. I heard that phrase from the esteemed Mohabir Anil Nandalal. He said it's a vulgar abuse of power, and it is. And because it's such a vulgar abuse of power, it has to be addressed. And in addressing a vulgar abuse of power, it is not witch hunting. Witch hunting is when you go after people who are innocent. But if people are guilty of stealing state assets, then they have to face the law. It's as simple as that. That is not witch hunting. But I want to encourage the Guyanese people to continue being patient, because they have been very, very patient, 4 months plus. 99% of the road has been traveled. We have to be calm and patient to travel the 1% that is remaining. We're expecting a judgment on Wednesday, July 8th. And shortly thereafter, I'm expecting a declaration. And based on the 10 tabulation certificates that this entire nation saw, there is only one winner. That is the PPPC and His Excellency, the Honorable Dr. Irfan Ali, who got, and the PPP got 233,000 plus votes versus the APNU that got 217,920 votes. The mathematical school that I went to and the arithmetic that I've learned, 233 is greater than 270. So I want to thank you very much for inviting me, but I just want to close it off by encouraging the Guyanese people. Let us remain peaceful. Let us remain calm. Let us continue to listen to our radios. Let us continue to listen to the Facebook messages coming out from the General Secretary of the PPP and the president, the next president of Guyana, His Excellency Dr. Irfan Ali, and from the other leaders, because the PPP is demonstrating leadership in this period. So let's allow that leadership to blossom. Thank you very much.
Mr. Sasenarine Singh and Bishop Juan Edghill, I thank you both for being a part of this program.
Thank you very much.
Better days are ahead for Guyana, Michael.
Thank you, Bishop. I am Michael Gordon. Thanks for watching, and to those viewing in Guyana and around the world, thank you for being a part of this program. This has been Government in Transition. Join my colleague, Utah, at 4 p.m.
Thank you.